Hello, this is Catherine Lamb-Hansard here. In the previous video, we learned that countries gain from trade. In other words, trade makes countries better off because it allows countries to consume quantities of goods that would otherwise not be possible. But where do these gains from trade come from? To answer the question, we need to understand the concept of comparative advantage. Before I explain what this means, let's take a look at the term absolute advantage. A country has absolute advantage when it uses fewer resources to produce a good compared to another country. We'll put it another way, when a country produces more goods or services compared to another country given the same amount of resources. There are various reasons why a country can have absolute advantage over a good or service. For example, they may have natural resources. Thailand has a monsoon climate, making it easier to harvest rice compared to a country like Spain. Let's take a look at an example. Suppose there are two countries, Saudi Arabia and the United States. Both countries produce oil and corn. In Saudi Arabia, it takes 1 labor hour to produce 1 barrel of oil, and it takes 4 hours to produce 1 bushel of corn. That's 4 times as long compared to oil. In the US, it takes 2 hours to produce 1 barrel of oil and 1 hour for corn. So who has absolute advantage in producing oil? In other words, who can produce oil with fewer hours of labor? Saudi Arabia takes 1 hour compared to 2 hours in the US. So the answer is Saudi Arabia. Who has absolute advantage in producing corn? It takes Saudi Arabia 4 hours to produce 1 bushel of corn compared to just 1 hour in the US. You guessed it, the United States. Next, let's look at how much oil and corn each country can produce. In this example, we are looking at the country's production per hour. To calculate the number of units produced per hour, we can do a simple calculation by dividing 1 hour and the hours required to produce a unit of good. Saudi Arabia can produce 1 barrel in 1 hour, or a quarter bushel of corn in 1 hour. The US can produce half a barrel of oil, or 1 bushel of corn in an hour. With this information, we can determine a country's opportunity cost in producing each good. Remember, an opportunity cost is what you have to give up to obtain something. What is Saudi Arabia's opportunity cost of producing a unit of oil? The answer is a quarter bushel of corn. If Saudi Arabia spends 1 hour producing oil, they would have to give up a quarter bushel of corn. What is Saudi Arabia's opportunity cost of producing a unit of corn? Because it takes Saudi Arabia 4 times as long to produce corn compared to oil, producing 1 unit of corn would mean giving up 4 barrels of oil. So the answer is 4 barrels of oil. Here is a table that summarizes the opportunity costs of producing each unit of good. Notice that the opportunity costs of corn is the inverse of oil. Once you know the opportunity of oil in terms of corn, you can easily determine the opportunity costs of corn by finding the inverse. Comparative advantage is when a country can produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another country. Who has comparative advantage in producing oil? Saudi Arabia, because the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of oil is a quarter bushel of corn compared to 2 bushels of corn for the United States. Who has comparative advantage in producing corn? The United States, because the United States have a lower opportunity cost of half a barrel of oil compared to 4 barrels for Saudi Arabia. A country who has comparative advantage over a good should specialize in producing that good. In this case, Saudi Arabia should produce oil and the US should produce corn. It is important to note, it is impossible for a country to have comparative advantage in the production of both goods. When specialization in a goods occur, assuming there is comparative advantage, total output will grow. As long as the opportunity costs of producing the goods differ across the two countries, both can gain from specialization and trade. Suppose Saudi Arabia buys 3 bushels of corn with every 1 barrel of oil. This implies that the price of each oil is 3 bushels of corn, which is lower than Saudi Arabia's opportunity cost of 4 bushels of corn. Then Saudi Arabia would benefit from trade. Suppose the US buys 1 barrel of oil with every 3 bushels of corn. The price of each corn is a third of oil, which is lower than the US opportunity cost of half a barrel of oil. Then the US would benefit from trade. For both parties to gain from trade, the price at which they trade must lie between the opportunity costs. For example, Saudi Arabia and the US must trade at the rate between half and 4 barrels of oil for each corn. So where do gains from trade come from? It comes from comparative advantage, where countries specialize in producing goods at a lower opportunity cost. This specialization leads to an increase in world production. So far, we've used countries to understand comparative advantage, but this concept can be applied to individuals too. Here are a couple of examples. Why do lawyers hire secretaries? Suppose a lawyer is faster at typing than her secretary, then she has absolute advantage in typing compared to her secretary, right? But why would she hire a secretary? Well, if the lawyer spends an hour typing, she could have spent that hour meeting clients and earning about $200. So her opportunity cost of typing is $200. But if a secretary spends an hour typing, she could have earned $25 on another job. So the secretary's opportunity cost is $25. It makes sense for the lawyer to hire a secretary so that she can go and meet clients. Here's another real-world example. Why Tiger Woods should not mow the lawn. Tiger Woods is a world-class golfer. Let's assume he is also very quick at mowing the lawn. Why should he hire someone else to mow the lawn instead? It's because his opportunity cost is so high. That is, if he mows the lawn, he could have used that time in shooting an ad for $200 million. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.